And now help me welcome Reverend Mavis Stephenson.
Good morning, everyone. Great day to you. It is my joy to be with you once again. In keeping with your theme this month of intention, the title of my talk today is Living Intentionally, Creating Meaningful Relationships. Let us know that from that place of peace within us that we connect with each day, whatever we think, say, and do, that presence, that connection goes forth from you to bless and to uplift people in a positive way, an uplifting way. Therefore, our intent should always be to become so spiritually charged that we ignite the spark of the divine in everyone we meet. How do we accomplish this? It means that we must embody the wholeness of God so that it expresses in our every thought, word, action, in our feelings, and in our reactions. And I don't want to forget that word reaction. I want you to be so mindful of it because we get the other things right. You know, the thinking, the feeling, the speaking, and the action, but we don't always get the reactions right. For instance, you're on the highway and some person decides that they must leave the highway and exit at a particular time, the last minute usually, and they cut right in front of you in order to make that exit. What comes out of your mouth in that moment, in that instant, is really indicative of what your subconscious mind looks like. That unholy expression or reaction. I know some of us usually say, oh, Jesus Christ, good. But sometimes it's not so refined. The expletive is not so refined, but it is indicative of the kind of reaction that you make. It says, what it says about you is that is what is in your uppermost in your subconscious mind. So if we are to be a positive, uplifting presence in the world, we have to look at ourselves, reactions included, and be willing to change at depth. We can only bring to the lives of others what we are ourselves. So in creating meaningful relationships, you cannot set an intention for the ideal you want to find in others if you are not willing to be it yourself. Universal laws are always operating in our world, and the law of attraction is not turned off when you decide or you're desiring someone of a certain ideal. You draw to you, you attract what you already are in consciousness. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So is his body. So are his affairs, and so are his relationships. When I speak of creating meaningful relationships, I want you to know that the desires of your heart already exist in consciousness as ideas. God created the heaven and the earth and everything in it. And on the seventh day, he rested from his work, Genesis tells us. So creation is over. The work for us now is to realize that our good exists in mind as divine ideas. And it is our responsibility as the user of ideas to open our hearts to receive simply by setting our intention. Friends, God's good for you is always an expansive idea that goes beyond you to bless others. So let me remind you, as King David reminded his son Solomon, know the God of your father and serve him with your whole heart and a willing mind. For the Lord searches all hearts and understands all the intent of the thoughts. So when the Bible talks about the heart, your whole heart, it is really referring to your subconscious mind, where everything you have ever thought or intended is housed. So in creating meaningful relationships, let us begin to build a subconscious mind of wholesome thoughts that reaches beyond us to awaken the goodness of God in others. We are co-creating with God a world that works for all. Just hold that in the back of your mind. Years ago, I was a member of a class meeting by conference call, and the facilitator that day was to be Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. And we were told that he might be late on the call, or he might not make the conference call because his plane was delayed and he was still in flight. And when Dr. Beckwith finally joined the call from the airport in Sweden where he had landed, he began with prayer. I was in my home office in Farmingdale on Long Island. And when he began, he spoke the word, and I can only describe the moment in the words of the familiar song. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. Dr. Beckwith did not belabor the vicissitudes of his situation. He simply turned over his whole heart, his feelings, his thinking, his whole being to the Father within, and he lifted up the receptive hearts of all on the conference call with him. And in that moment was a powerful expression of God's love. I share this with you this morning to say that our intentions have to go beyond our personal or small selves or personal success of meeting our needs. When we go within to the Father, we have to move beyond that to ignite in others, in everyone, that same success, so that they too are uplifted and enriched in their lives by virtue of our consciousness of the Christ within. Friends, I don't remember what that course was that I was taking with Dr. Beckwith, but I can tell you that I remember vividly the impact of that holy moment. That's the kind of experience that we all want, is it not? Necessary to a meaningful relationship is the ability to communicate in a clear and honest way. And while one is speaking, I encourage you to listen with a compassionate heart, open and compassionate. Don't try to interrupt the other person because there is something that you want to say that is so important you can't wait. Be genuinely engaged, asking questions of the other from time to time to show your interest and to encourage greater communication. Surely you can relate to those times when someone was speaking and you couldn't wait to top their experience because you had a better one. Perhaps, friends, that was because you were afraid you would not be heard. It takes discipline to say to the unspiritualized ego, be quiet. Go somewhere and sit down. Be quiet so you can be fully present for another person. It is when you cultivate this listening ear that you gain insight into the needs of others. Indicative in creating meaningful relationships is learning to share your authentic selves. It means being honest about our failings as we are about our strengths. Daring to be vulnerable to scrutiny, to criticism, and even to judgment. But know that our vulnerability can be our growth opportunity. I remember when I just started in truth, my teacher, Ida Bowles, would say, she has porcupine consciousness, she would say of me, because everything had me bristling. You are vulnerable. And that vulnerability can be a plus for you. And I want you to hear what Brené Brown in her book, Daring Greatly, when she describes vulnerability, this is what she says, and I quote, "It is that unstable feeling we get when we step out of our comfort zone and do something that forces us to loosen control. It is the cradle of emotions and experiences that we crave. It is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity." Friends, if we are willing to be honest about our stuff, willing to admit that we don't get things right every time, we can release today the armor we hide behind that is stifling us, that is stifling all the wonderful things that we are. We can grow through this not being good enough feeling, this lesser than mentality. We can do that today. We can seek to know and to understand that the wholeness and the peace that is at the center of our being is what we need to connect with to strengthen us and which will go beyond us to touch the lives of others. It is then, and I'm speaking about being vulnerable, daring to be vulnerable. It is then that others can forgive you, they can embrace you, they can stand in your shoes, they can be there for you. It is then that the other person knows that you will be there for them in their times of weakness. It is then that they know that they can trust you with their vulnerable selves. For without trust, a relationship has no future. Friends, we cannot live without acceptance and connection. We were born to connect, so we can't continue to hide behind our armor because we're vulnerable. We need each other. A baby, remember that a baby that is never touched will not thrive. And scientists tell us today that couples need only to hold hands to synchronize their brain waves, their heartbeats, their breathing, and to ease pain. Because you see, our touch induces the release of oxytocin. I didn't say oxycontin, I said oxytocin, which is the happy hormone. It gives us that satisfying feeling. I want to share a Bible story with you. The gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, report the healing of a woman with a 12-year hemorrhagic condition, unsuccessfully treated by physicians at great expense to her, and she was left worse off. The laws of defilement labeled her untouchable, and she was unaccepted. She was isolated by her society. So you can see that at this point, she was at her extremity, penniless, helpless, hopeless. But I want you to know that one's extremity is God's opportunity to act. Jesus comes to town. And she knew intuitively that if she could just touch the hem of his garment, that she would be healed. That's no different than what you know in your heart right now that you have to do to be healed. For when you touch God, God touches you. In spite of the multitude that thronged Jesus, she approached him from behind, pushing her way through the crowd, and she touched the hem of his garment. And the moment she did, she was healed. She opened her heart to the healing power of the Father, and she was healed immediately. Jesus felt the touch. That touch of faith, the touch of relationship, the touch of acceptance that caused the healing power to go out from him, you see. And he asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples said to him, "Master, the multitude throng you and press you, and you ask, 'Who touched you?'" And Jesus answered, "Somebody touched me, for I perceived the power going out from me." And the woman had to admit that she had indeed touched him. She was the one, and that by the healing, energizing presence of the wholeness of God that flowed through him, she was healed. Friends, when the intention to be whole is so strong and the will to do what is necessary to receive it is so directed, the gates of heaven will open to you and give you what you want. Hear her, universe, God says. Hear her, universe, and give her what she wants. In his own good and perfect way, his own accepting and endearing way, Jesus says, daughter, not woman, not woman. He says, endearingly, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your afflictions. Go in peace. Go in peace. Find that peace. Let us open our hearts to the love of God that we may be healed in every aspect of our being. And like Jesus, kindle that love in everyone we meet. I would be remiss if I ended this talk without mentioning our social media. We're on Zoom. When we set the intention for creating meaningful relationships, connecting by text, email, Instagram, Facebook, gives us the global reach. And just like Jesus, we can have a multitude of followers. But the depth of attention necessary for serious interaction is not present. And that is why I can't wait for church to be open. Look at Jesus's example. Look to that example. He had a multitude around him. But I also want you to know that only one in that crowd touched him at a deep, richly fulfilling and transforming level. She touched him, and he touched her at a deeply fulfilling and transforming level of life. I say to you this morning, set the intention to be that for others, my friends. Be that for even one person. God bless you. Amen.